Is clarity on the rocks? Is it cooked? Today we'll break that down with you. It is going to be a good one. I've got a special guest to talk about this, of what's happening in DC right now. Before I get started, I want to thank our sponsor, and that is Tangem. This is where you can get into self-custody. And if you guys have not already stepped into self-custody, this is probably one of the things on your checklist that you should do in crypto. And of course, Tangem is the spot for it. So it's like a credit card, works in tandem with your phone. And of course, it is one of the best and easiest platforms out there in terms of self-custody to get started on. Very easy to set up. It is a seedless by design, which is what everybody is always scared about, is getting in a seed phrase and having to manage all that. Tangem kind of changes that. So use our link down below. It's going to get you started. I've got a special guest joining us today, and we're going to be talking about clarity and whether or not this is getting to a point here where we are at a little bit of a risk. As you can see right here, it was at around 68, almost 70%, 72 on the 21st. And then of course it has fallen dramatically down here to 61% as we are recording right now. Something is brewing in DC, and of course this is what we're talking about. Some right now saying that Coinbase not sold on the stablecoin compromise. As many of you guys know, if you've been following this for a long time, there's two camps. One is no compromise, we want stablecoin yields. Others are passive versus active stablecoin yields, meaning you got to do something to earn that yield and maybe it not even be called a yield. So this is the issue right now. We understand that both Tom Tillis and Angela Alsobrooks have been kind of the two senators that have been pushing on trying to get this consistency across the two parties. That, of course, is being led into what Crypto in America reported on. I want to hit on a couple of items right here. Tuesday descended into a yelling match between representatives from crypto exchanges, fintech, and venture capitalists. That further went into Monday meetings where they held a 30-minute increments. Participants were given copies of the text to review and take notes, but not keep. So 30 minutes to review hundreds of pages, not be able to take notes or keep copies. Something's very unusual there. Reactions are still coming out, but the language appears to be reflective of the compromise that Tillis and Alsobrooks in the White House set out to achieve, which would be possibly released as early as Wednesday. That is today. What we're seeing right now continues to put some pressure on it. I don't understand what Patrick is doing, because I would think he would be locked in right now, locked in on what's going on. And of course, if you look at this statement, Patrick Witt, again, is out there giving kudos to Tom Tillis and Senator Alsobrooks for this. So maybe I don't understand where the White House is on this. I can't tell if they're pro, against, trying to get this across the line. They're trying to do something for the industry or not. And then, of course, Senator Lummis, this is kind of what tells me that we have a little bit of a warning sign right here, because she has been very adamant about, no, this is almost done. This is almost done. And then right here, bipartisan compromise is necessary for Clarity Act to pass. We're working around the clock to ensure stablecoin rewards are protected. So this gets me concerned. And of course, because of that, I wanted to bring in someone that actually lives and breathes DC, and that is Chris Hayes, partner at Thorn Run. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so a lot happening in DC right now, but yet not a lot reported in terms of what's coming out of these negotiations and some of the things that's happening with the senators and, of course, the markup of this bill. First of all, where are you seeing it today as it is right now? How does this stand between the two parties?
Well, I mean, I think there's been some text that, as you indicated, folks have seen, hasn't been widely distributed. I think that's somewhat by design, right? It kind of hurts some of those negotiations if you're distributing too widely, and then people can object, right? Yeah. You really need some of the core players here, particularly Coinbase, A16Z, some other core players who are really involved in the market structure, Clarity Act negotiations, to reach something they can be comfortable with, right? So at the same time, there weren't the votes. The last time we had a vote scheduled for the position of the crypto industry that yields should continue. So the banking industry, the money market fund industry really wanted to restrict what had been permissible under Genius. And so Coinbase didn't have the votes to stop that amendment from happening, which is why the vote was taken down a couple months ago. And so now we're back at the same spot, right? Are we going to have a compromise that allows those votes to be able to come to some agreement on clarity, right? Can this vote move forward?
Right.
Do we need Coinbase's support for it to advance?
So is there a good, bad version of this? Can you give us some insights on what you like and don't like of what we're hearing so far?
I think the challenge really is, it was really about, does the White House have the pressure on these Republicans who were supporting sort of the banking position on this issue? And I think what we've seen is they've pushed as hard as they could. I mean, President Trump has tweeted about it, I think pushing from sort of the crypto industry side on it. And what you're seeing in this compromise suggests that the banking industry has decided that they don't feel sufficiently pressured by that to make concessions on their end. And I think the political environment for them is sort of like, the longer this bill gets delayed, the less likely it gets done, right? By June or July, Congress will stop doing anything this year. So we've already lost 2 months for a deal that looks very similar to what the deal was on the table back in February.
Yeah. All right. So it took 2 months from the last one to where we are now. It does not appear that there's been a landslide change in what the structure is. In your opinion, does this put clarity at risk? Because that would take, even if they could come back, another 2 months of negotiation puts this out of the realm of getting through this year, does it not?
I think it's really about whether the markup would go forward without, first of all, whether Coinbase would support this deal. I think that's sort of critical. And other crypto industry participants, but I would put them and A16Z really in the driver's seat on many of these issues. Are they comfortable with this deal? If not, then the question is, are other folks in the industry wanting to move forward with a vote without Coinbase's support? And what are the implications for that, particularly around the midterm elections coming up? And Coinbase obviously has a pretty strong political apparatus. And so I think that's a decision point. And as the industry is really hung together. I think many folks are less concerned with the yield issue. I would note the DeFi folks have other concerns in the bill that also have to be sort of addressed. And also the certainty around being able to buy and sell crypto, layer ones, getting certainty about their crypto tokens, et cetera. All of that is riding on clarity. And those folks may break from where Coinbase is, but we have not seen that, because I think the White House has said, hey, stick with us. We're trying to work on a compromise. Let's keep the industry together. And I think we're reaching sort of a point where is the bill going to move forward with or without their support? And I
so
think
this is pretty much in a point of fragmentation in what you're saying. Because of that, So because of that, especially on DeFi, the side of DeFi, because that of course is one of the major areas that I think would be a non-starter. Now you're getting into all sorts of issues with just privacy, property rights, et cetera, that gets into this. Anything that you're seeing coming out in terms of the language that affects DeFi, self-custody, privacy in general?
Well, the DeFi provisions in the bill, there were a variety of amendments that were on the table that folks did not get to see before the last vote. Many of those led by some of the Democratic senators who wanted to see more AML requirements and requirements on DeFi protocols and self-custody. So you had sort of the original text, which protected self-custody, so created a right to self-custody, the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, which protected software developers from being money transmitters. But then you had a whole new provision around how to impose AML requirements on DeFi protocols, particularly DeFi front ends. And where those AML requirements would lie. And I think those issues are still somewhat up in the air in terms of what we'd see going into a vote. So those issues are still need to be addressed, right? Originally, this bill did not bring DeFi into the regulatory umbrella. But to get the Democratic votes necessary, they had to add them into the DeFi umbrella, add them into the regulatory umbrella. And then the question is, who has to comply with those requirements?
How long do you think it will be? Do you think we're going to see something coming out of the Senate today or out of Congress? today or not?
I think there's obviously been a lot of discussions about the text. I think they need to see what the deal is on yield and whether it's going to be supported by the industry or not. And then I think we would schedule a markup vote and we'd see a draft come out ahead of that markup vote, probably in the next couple weeks. We don't have that deal on yield yet, right? We're still, and now we're getting articles just coming out today suggesting that Coinbase is not on board with it. And I think the question is waiting longer going to produce a better result? We've waited 2 months. The political environment is worse for the bill than it was 2 months ago. And we essentially had the same deal on the table and the same lack of votes for a better deal for crypto on yield. So my thought is this deal is not going to get better with time. And if this bill doesn't pass this year, you're ending up potentially with a much worse bill overall for everyone if there is one next year.
How does this affect Circle and Coinbase directly? Obviously, we saw stock prices yesterday just on the hint that there wasn't going to be a deal on the table.
Well, so the text that sort of has percolated around, right? So it hasn't been distributed yet, but I think people have seen elements of it. Really looks at basically restrictions on affiliates, right? So Genius prevented issuers from paying yield, but allowed third-party affiliates like exchanges to pay yield to stablecoin holders or rewards, et cetera, however you want to structure them. And this new restriction would further constrain what's in the Genius text by basically saying that any kind of reward that looks economically or functionally equivalent to an interest-bearing bank account, bank deposit, would be prevented, with basically kicking it to the regulators, the Treasury Department, CFTC, SEC, to craft a list of permissible type reward activities. So when you think about the current model, I think this impacts a lot of stablecoin issuers. I actually think Circle is maybe less harmed than others who are trying to get more traction in the marketplace. Because if you think about USDG or you think about PYUSD, many of these folks are paying rewards to encourage circulation of their stablecoin. And so being unable to pay that obviously prevents wider adoption of other stablecoins. So it could, in some ways, actually, I think it could be better for Circle, being one of the two predominant stablecoins, Tether and Circle, currently being used in the environment. However, when you think about the unique Coinbase-Circle relationship, right, Coinbase gets paid 100% of all the interest that Circle is paying to USDC holders on Coinbase. They get 100% of that interest income. If you're not paying rewards to make them hold those stablecoins on Coinbase through just holding them, then maybe you're really harming a revenue source. And clearly, this is quite an important revenue source for Coinbase. You only have to look at the quarterly filings for Circle and Coinbase to see how it makes up a significant portion of their revenue, which is why they care so much about it.
So in regards to that they're going after DeFi, this was a tweet coming in. Not sure all the reason FUD, front-end regulation, Congress clarity is coming from. The relevant section 302 only calls for guidance on sanction laws that already applied to the expanding authority of DeFi. Where does this play out? From a software development side, he talks about it here. These sections are tolerable as long as we get the BRCA, which isn't in this bill as we know it. So how does DeFi play into this?
Like I mentioned, there's two parts with DeFi with BRCA, right, which is sort of protective language, and then you have new AML requirements. My understanding, looking at the latest text, right, so I've seen the text. I haven't seen the DeFi provisions that may have been included since right before the markup that was scheduled back in February. That language would impose obligations, it's convoluted language, but essentially on the front ends of DeFi protocols. It would carve out self-custodial wallets, including, we believe, wallet front ends, but it would impose it on, say, the website that would allow you to access a Uniswap or access a DeFi pool. The obligations would fall there, and it would require Treasury, I think, to make rulemaking around AML requirements there. and then you're sort of fighting that at the regulatory level. But I know folks would like to change those provisions, of course.
Yeah, that would be a huge. I mean, you're losing yields. Now you're getting basically KYC at the DeFi level, at least for Americans. You know, outside of America, you're just you're running world, which is what I don't understand. We're seeing regulatory framework that's being built in Asia, Europe, the Middle East, all of which are not going in this direction. They are kind of fostering the growth potential. Does this not put the U.S. kind of in a disadvantage with all these devices?
I think it does in terms of bringing these platforms into the United States. But I think the national security wing of both parties is pretty strong on these issues. So Senator Warner, who's one of the main moderate Democrats negotiating this on the banking committee, is the ranking member on the Senate Intelligence Committee. And so many of the folks who are on the intelligence committees or on the national security oriented committees are concerned about AML and terrorism finance and things like that. And that has, I think, influenced their views on how to, what requirements need to be there. And so I think they're also being influenced by traditional finance players as well. While, they think about, hey, we have a system of regulated intermediaries in the traditional markets. And what I really see around DeFi, which I think is quite interesting, is you sort of have a clash of regulatory frameworks, right? So you have a financial services regulatory framework traditionally in the U.S. I've been working on financial regulation for 15 years, which is really premised on a system of regulated intermediaries. And so each of those have AML, KYC obligations, right? You have investor disclosures, all those sort of requirements. And that's how, traditional finance is operated. And these are the people who are negotiating the bill, right? Very familiar with those frameworks. And then DeFi folks have more of an internet regulation approach, right? When you think about how social media is regulated, right? Facebook puts up the page and they collect revenue at the back end, and they're not responsible for what's on the page. And that is more of a DeFi approach to, I would say, Section 230 is the often discussion. And that's what the DeFi folks are bringing to bear in their perspective. And those are sort of clashing in sort of where are the requirements and how do we automate those requirements? I think people are certainly open to that.
Okay. Listen, I've got a lightning round here I want to go through with you, which is just a whole quick line of questions that might play into this. Clarity Act is worth passing as currently rumored to be written. Do you think yes or no?
I think it is, right? So it's a lightning round, so I won't go too fast.
There you go. Lightning round. Yes, he goes for it. Senators were unbothered by Circle, Coinbase, and Robinhood stocks crashing after the yield compromise.
Ooh, I can't say for sure, but I would say probably no.
So they were unbothered. No, they were not. You think they were bothered?
They were unbothered, is what I meant. Yes,
okay, okay. I don't think they care.
I don't think they care.
Banks are betting on being able to more easily ban yields via OCC and policy rather than passing a law.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. We're on the same boat right now.
Next year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, what is Tim Scott and other pro-crypto senators willing to throw under the bus? Self-custody protections or DeFi developer protections out of those two? What do you think they would?
I actually think that you're making me pick. I would say neither, but I guess probably DeFi developer protect. Put it in the middle here.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to put you in the middle. It's a hard one because I don't know where I don't know if this would kill it or if Scott, I don't know. This is going to get interesting in the next couple of weeks because we are really down to the wire now. Clarity doesn't, if Clarity doesn't survive, if Coinbase publicly tears it down again, do you think that will be the case?
That's a tough one.
I mean, they went after it hard the first time around.
I'm going to say false.
Okay, all right. So you think this might weather through? Well,
I think so.
Jamie will be happy about that.
If the rest of the industry came out in support, I think so.
If the who?
If the rest of the industry came out and supported, hey, we need to move forward with this bill, I think it could. I think it could move forward.
Okay. House will not pass Clarity if it removes the stablecoin yields.
I think no, they'll pass
All
it.
right. I'm kind of in your, I think I'm there now. I think this is going to get jammed down. Tim Scott schedules a markup in the next 10 days, or this thing's over.
I think you could go longer than 10 days.
What would it be? What would you say?
If it doesn't happen by the end of April, I think it's a really tall order.
End of April. That's still a lot of time. All right, 30 days. Okay. All right, we'll go on that one. Current Clarity bill draft is tailored more towards retail or banks and crypto companies?
Banks and crypto companies.
Yeah, okay. Well, at least you're being truthful there, Chris. You know, we get a lot of people that are not truthful. They're not truthful on this show, and I just don't like that. If Clarity doesn't include DeFi and self-custody protections, then its passing will crash the market.
What do you mean by protections? Like protecting them from regulation, or?
Yeah. Well, like, you know, in DeFi, in the sense of protecting the developers, it's BRCA.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. So you say no. All right. So you're feeling pretty good about this then, but the key is getting the rest or some of the rest of the industry to align and say, okay, we're good as it is right now. Banks win, no stablecoin for the peasants, be done with you, and moving on down the road here is what it boils down to.
Yes, I think that's right.
Wow, okay. Well, I don't know if you're going to be a popular guest or not on this show, but maybe you will
probably
be.
not. I try to be honest about how I see this.
Maybe you will be because you're being honest, and people are like, well, at least he's telling us what is happening, you know, because I think that's the biggest problem that everybody is concerned with right now is they feel like the industry is kind of out in the dark, you know, so, and it seems like that is not the case.
I mean, I think you have to realize this is the best political environment the industry will have to pass a bill, probably in the next 4 years. So if you want a bill passed, now the question is, right, some of this stuff is being done through rulemaking. So you probably saw the token interpretation that the EXITS put out. That clearly is the backup strategy for many of the crypto exchanges, is the thought that, okay, I can go get this done through rulemaking. We'll define these not as securities over at the SEC, that they're not covered by Howie, but that's subject to litigation. That's subject to the whims of the next presidential administration that comes in. And the bet there is that the industry will be so consolidated with traditional finance by the next presidential administration that won't change. Or that won't be sued to be blocked under the Administrative Procedures Act or one of these other things. And so if you want long-term legal certainty, a bill is the best choice. And now is the environment to get that done, right? The political environment will, if trends with the midterms, if Dems take the House, you are going to have a bill, if they even focus on it, would be much worse for the industry, particularly on many of these DeFi AML issues that people are concerned about.
Crazy stuff out there. Listen, it's been good having you on. We're going to get you back as things start to transition in toward a decision actually making it out into the public where we can actually see what's going on. So thank you so much for stopping in. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Appreciate the time.
If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, drop a comment down below, and also join our free private member group. The link is in the description.